Hey, y'all, what it do, what it is. Y'all know what time? It's Hold Up and Another Thing presented by Mixed Vibes Media. Y'all already know the vibes. Speaking of vibes, I got a lovely angelic voice on the pod with me today. AG Sully. Sully, right? AG Sully, right?
Yes, yes.
I got her. Got her. I heard her on the Tony Kornheiser podcast. Someone sent your music in.
hmm
And normally, I don't even listen to the music at the end. I just be like, all right, cool. But it's like that song hit. I want to say "Lock My Door" was the first song that came on.
I
I
think so. Yeah.
it just hit. Like I don't know why it just hit personally, and I'm like, oh, okay. It's not like I'm not used to that type of music when I listen to the pod to come on. So, let me start off with that. What's it like to have that experience? To have sports people coming to you about
It's
music?
it's an audience that I haven't had before. That I mean, like I didn't really know who I didn't know anything about that podcast.
Right.
And I was very surprised. Like the guy that sent the song in, you know, wait tables on the side.
Right.
And he was like, I really want to submit you to this podcast. It's a sports podcast, but they highlight like independent artists. And I was like, okay, sure, and it's like a whole different audience that like started reaching out and liking my stuff like on Facebook and Instagram, like 40-year-old men. And I'm like, this is awesome. It was funny though. It was so like different than the usual people, and I like a little variety. I think it's fun.
Respect it. I respect it. Like I said, the music came on. Like I told you, I was just shocked. I've been sending your music to people because it's like, oh, this is dope right here. Y'all really should hear this. But
Thank you.
so it's a couple songs I want to ask you about. But let's start
Okay.
from the beginning. What influenced you? Like, what made you decide? Okay, I want to do music.
I I started singing in high school, and I was doing mostly church music, and I had planned to do that with my life. I wanted to like lead worship. And then I started studying at MTSU, um and was just like exposed to things that I had never been exposed to before, like different music. I mean, I was definitely raised in like a very conservative family, and I just never heard like anything with I feel like the most like soulful music that I heard growing up was Earth, Wind and Fire. Like I heard a few songs by them and I was like, this is cool. But I think just being around different people that I just never been around before, and I started writing in college, and I think that's when it clicked for me that I didn't really I didn't really care about church music. Like what I really wanted to write about was things that I was experiencing and stuff that, I wanted to write about my life and my thoughts and my relationships, and I wanted people to relate to it. And I realized that writing songs was the most like precious form of communication that I'd ever experienced. And I think that's when it clicked for me that I didn't just want to sing, I wanted to sing what I wrote, you know?
You wanted to sing about your life and your experiences.
Yeah.
Right? That is dope. Like I said, that's dope. So what's your process when you writing a song? Do you is it something that clicks in you, or do you maybe sit down and be like, I'm gonna write a song today? What's your process?
It's different. I do sit down to write a lot just because I like playing. I play piano mostly. Um, but I do feel like I do get some ideas randomly and just record them on a voice message or voice memo really quickly. Like if I'm at work, you know, sometimes I just step outside and then I'm excited to work on it later. But it's usually just I like pick out like some chords on piano, and it's probably I'm already thinking something, I'm already going through or dealing with something and I need to write about it. Um, but I'm usually at home. I don't do a lot of co-writing. So I'm usually just playing around on piano or like trying to figure out something on guitar, and it just kind of comes about.
Okay, let's take you back just a little bit. Go back one more time. A lot of singers they say they started in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Was it you that said I want to sing in the church, or was it your family that said, "Hey, you got a good voice, you should be a part of singing in the church"?
I wanted to do it. Like I feel like I was kind of the one dragging, like we grew up in the church. We grew up in the church, but I was definitely the one kind of going to new places that were different than like because you know I was born in into the Southern Baptist church, and as when I started to sing, like I really wanted to sing with the band, and like I loved, and it's not right, like it's not what leading worship should be,
Okay,
but I love just being in front of people and singing, you know.
okay,
And I was the one getting my parents to come to like the church that I was going to so that they could hear me sing. You know what I'm saying?
makes a lot of sense. What what is it that you get like an extra adrenaline kick when you singing in front of people?
Yeah, it's adrenaline. I think it's also just feeling very like understood in that moment, like because I'm pretty pretty introverted and pretty soft spoken, and I don't like I wouldn't say I'm the center of attention in most situations. Definitely not like life of the party. And like performing is the one moment where people are really, really listening to what I have to say. And I think that's what it is for me. It's very special.
I understand that. I wouldn't consider myself center of attention either, but I do a podcast. Actually, I do a couple of them. So I'm like you said, I'm the quiet kid until it's time to do the podcast, and I can talk and I
Mm-hmm.
give my opinion. So I like when you said that, I instantly it clicked. I completely
Right.
understood that. Like
Right.
it,
It's like your moment that feels like it's only your moment, you
mhm.
know?
And it's my talent. It's just like saying
Yes.
yes, and you blessing the world with your talent because you are talented. Let me make
Thank
sure.
you.
I will make sure I say that enough in this podcast. You are definitely talented. But
Thank you.
when you was at it's Middle Tennessee State, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I know a little bit about Tennessee. I'm from Kentucky. I know a little bit about Tennessee.
Mm.
Uh, what what was the first song that you heard there that was like, oh, all right,
Um,
or artist? It could be a song or artist that made you go, yeah, I won't switch. I won't switch it up a little bit more.
I started, or a friend showed me D'Angelo, and that rocked my world. Obviously, I listened to Voodoo like top to bottom and was like, wait a sec, like this is. I mean, I just never heard anything like it, and I loved like his vocal performance because it's so imperfect but perfect at the same time. And I loved that how like sloppy, like the whole, you know, his songs, they're not like super polished, and that's what makes them so good. Um, and then I started to listen to like No Name and like that kind of like I'd heard rap, of course, but like No Name, she was one of my biggest like influences for a long time because she was like rapping over jazz.
Mm.
And I really love jazz. And yeah, like those were two big artists that like really changed me. And that was also when Daniel Caesar was like at the height of being Daniel Caesar, and that was like very approachable, like soul music, you know? And all of that combined was like, I'm I have to I have to stop singing Hillsong and like I have to like get in this world. It just felt so right for me, like vocally, to sing that style.
Let me tell you, when you said D'Angelo, it like another thing, it just clicked like, yo, she do give me a D'Angelo feel. You give me that soulful enjoyment of music. Like you, like I don't know, your voice just says passion. It gives a lot of passion when you sing. So do you remember the first song you wrote?
Yes.
What was it called?
Um it was the I can't remember the name of it if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Uh I don't even know if it had a name. The first song I wrote was um in college, and my parents sold our childhood home that like we grew up in, and it was really sad to me. Like that was the only house that I had ever lived in, and I came home and every it was empty. And that was really emotional for me. And I'm already a really emotional person. I'm like extremely sensitive. And I think that was the first time that I felt like I wanted to write a song. I had never really been like, I never really been in love, like all of the things that people write songs about, like I had never really experienced yet. And that was the first moment for me that I was like, I think that I need to write about coming home to my empty childhood home.
Okay. You talked about your parents. How supportive are your parents in your goal of chasing music? Because a lot of parents will look at their child saying music or acting, they'll look at them with a side eye like, you don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer? Do you know some this more, I guess they would say stable would be the word? How are they with your support of music?
Ooh. They, like they recognize that I love doing it,
Mhm.
and they recognize that I I'm good at it. Um there's a disconnect for sure. There's a disconnect when it comes to like the industry and how brutal it is, especially like as a woman. Being a woman in the music industry is insane. There's so many parts of that there's so many layers of that, but I think they want me to be happy, and they don't quite understand it, why I would choose to like work a service job and choose to be broke, when I could have just gone to school. And or I also quit school. I don't think I told you that. That was a big thing. That was a really big thing that my parents were not happy with, but they want me to pursue what makes me feel like complete, but it's a disconnect for sure.
Okay, most definitely, most definitely. All right, so let me ask about the two songs that was on the podcast before I get into the other songs that I heard and I was like, whoa. Lock My
Mm-hmm.
Door.
Mm-hmm.
Where was you at mentally when you wrote that song? Cause that's a
So I had some bad roommates,
okay.
and it's actually literally about locking my door. And I would just come. I lived in an apartment with two other girls, and they were just kind of mean. Like, we didn't get along, and they were like very passive aggressive with me. And so I would just come home and go straight to my room and like just hope that I wouldn't have to run into them or anything. So it's about those girls.
Okay. I've never lived with anybody that I wasn't in a relationship with. I
Mm-hmm.
People having roommates, I don't even know if I can handle it. Because, like you said, people could be jerks. I just rather not deal with it. Okay, seasonal.
Um, I wrote that over quarantine,
Okay.
and I've always really struggled with like some pretty intense mood swings and a lot of seasonal depression. And that was and just like how the weather really really affects my mood a lot of times, and like on a beautiful day I feel great, you know, but when it's gloomy outside I feel gloomy inside. And I wish that I could like look past that a lot of times, but just has such an effect on me. And you know, being locked inside, like I was really noticing that.
Oh, all right. So like you said, you wrote that during quarantine. How did quarantine affect you with your music? Did it put a kind of hold on it, or was you able to get a lot of stuff recorded?
I wrote a lot. I didn't record a lot until it got a little more like safe to do that. I had like a lot of shows planned that I had to cancel, and I feel like I had a lot of momentum at that time, and shows were kind of really or I was playing a lot of shows, and I loved playing them, and that really worked for me. Like performing in front of people really worked. I wasn't really good at being like an online presence, and you know, that was when like TikTok was starting, and that's a whole
Hmm.
thing now.
Yeah.
Um, I do feel like it put a damper on some momentum that I had at the time. And I'm still like, I feel like I'm finally getting out of that, you know?
But yeah, the quarantine shut a lot of things down. It also started a lot of things, like you said, TikTok. A lot of people got into the podcast game during that. Quarantine changed the world, and I don't think we're ever going to get back to what we was prior to the quarantine before the virus and all of that. Like I said, it's a couple more songs that I want to get to. FOMO. Yeah, I
FOMO,
love that song.
w- thank you. One of the like first few songs that I ever wrote, I actually wrote that song in the practice room, one of the practice rooms at MTSU. And just because like I was still pretty like sheltered like around then, like, you know, it was like my like sophomore year of college, and everyone was being like everyone was doing the college thing, like
Right.
the parties and stuff, and I just wasn't yet. I had my little phase of that, but like I was definitely feeling like a little left out of like the college life then. And I yeah, it's basically about the fear of missing out.
Okay. All right. And then one more. Easier to be angry.
Ooh. Yeah, I went through a pretty bad breakup end of last year around Thanksgiving. It was really my only big breakup. I dated this guy for 4 years. I just turned 25. Um, so we dated like through some really intense moments. Like we dated through COVID, you know, when I quit school, like we went through a lot of things together. And I thought that this was like end all be all with this guy. And we kind of said that it was. And it just basically like it got really ugly like really fast, and we broke up, and that rocked my world. I'd never thought that was going to happen. And I went to my friend Chancey's house like the next week, and he was like, the guy that I dated was already seeing another girl in like the next week. And man, I was fired up. I mean, like,
Well, me too.
yeah, I mean, I was just pissed off. Like, I had never, I don't think I have ever experienced hate like in my blood until that moment. And I went to um my friend's house, and he was the co-writer on the song. He plays guitar. And I remember walking in and being like, I've got to write something, and it's going to be ugly. Because I was just like, my blood was boiling. Like, and the first thing I said, I was like, okay, I think it needs to start off like, I hate your family and I hate your friends and I hate you, you know? And so that's where like the whole concept came from. Because it was just easier to like be mad at him than to like, you can't start healing right off the bat. You have to be mad, you know?
You preaching right now. Yes, you do have to be mad. You have to go through the angry phase.
Yeah. Yes. And it's like, I hated him, but like, I still loved him, of course, you know? Um, and it's like, I think you can hate and love someone at the same time. And I think that song like captures that.
It does. It does very well. Like I said, great song. So two more questions before we get up out of here. What is your favorite song?
My favorite song. Um, I would probably say Untitled or How Does It Feel by D'Angelo is up there for me, if not number one. And there's this guy called Serpent with Feet. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's pretty small still, but he has this song called Bless Your Heart. That's beautiful. You should check it out. And it's just like poetry in the form of music.
Okay. Then what's your favorite song of you that you wrote?
Um, that's released.
Yes, that's release. Let's do this.
Uh,
Let's do this release.
um, I do love Easier to Be Angry. I think that's the best song I've released so far, but I would say my favorite is probably the either Lock My Door or the interlude track on that album.
Okay. All right, that's dope. That's dope. So anything you want to promote, any new music coming, any shows coming that you want to shout out?
I am releasing another single before the year is over. Um, but yeah, I'm mainly just focusing on recording a new EP right now. So yeah.
Okay, that's dope. Like I said, your music's incredible. Everybody that I've shared it to said your music was great. So you gonna be dope. I already know it. Like you just gonna take over. Remember us small people when you take over. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Well, thank
when,
you for having me.
when you go on your big press run, just remember the small people. Maybe come back, say hi one time for the one time.
I could never forget.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Tell people real quick, promote your music, tell them where they can find it and all of that.
Yeah, it's on all the platforms. It's just AG Sully. Um, and my socials are under agsully.club.
All right, all right. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, y'all know what time it is. This is Hold Up and Another Thing presented by Mixed Vibes Media. I told y'all we was going to bring the vibes. Make sure y'all check her out. She's dope. I'm not just saying it because she's on the pod. She really is dope. We're going to catch y'all next week. Later.